won't Imam Al Mahdi kill Dajjal? Today we will revisit the story of Imam Al Mahdi facing his formidable enemy called Dajjal, the Antichrist, but also highlight the involvement of the Prophet Insa, Jesus Christ. Why won't Imam Al Mahdi kill Dajjal? Why does this mission fall to the Prophet Insa, Jesus Christ? The mission of the Prophet Insa is full of facts concerning the realm of Ghaib that Allah has hidden from most people who are unaware of their existence. Among these hidden secrets is Dajjal. When God sent the Prophet Moses, he found for him a formidable enemy named Pharaoh. When he sent the Prophet Muhammad, he found for him a fierce enemy named Abu Lahab. This is how God proceeds with his messengers, because each time he entrusts them with a mission, he sends them an enemy to oppose them. God does this to test the courage of the prophet, but also to see what the mission entrusted to him is worth. For every prophet must be a reference, and this is how God tests his moral courage, his will, and his determination. Thus, God in his wisdom said that to achieve this, he must find for the prophet a dangerous enemy. Therefore, he chose an enemy for each prophet. Concerning Jesus, even though God raised him to heaven, he had chosen countless enemies for him. They had even established an assassination plan which ended up failing during the ascension. From the world of Ghaib, the Prophet Moses knew that upon his arrival on earth, he would find Pharaoh who would oppose his mission. Thus, when a prophet comes to earth, all the details of his mission are revealed to him, and this does not prevent Allah from monitoring him very closely in order to help him during times of difficulty. This is why the Prophet Moses, upon his arrival, knew that he would confront Pharaoh. Regarding the Prophet Insa, son of Mary, God found him a formidable enemy. And this enemy comes from the same place where Pharaoh was raised, where Namruth Canaan and Abu Lahab were trained, as well as all those who troubled God's missionaries. Dajjal was raised in the place where the enemies of the prophets were raised, yet he, Dajjal, was among the worst enemies. He was one of the toughest, one of the most adept at misleading people, but also one of the most wicked. Thus, all the prophets had noticed Dajjal because of his wickedness, his ability to mislead people, but also his terrible power with which God endowed him so that he could carry out his mission. And his mission is to be the enemy of God and his messenger. We see thus that everything is based on divine will. This story, recounted in the books, is difficult to understand if one does not associate with a man of God who had access to the Ghaib world. Thus, in the bookish accounts, it is said that all the prophets had warned their people about the Antichrist. Thus, all the prophets, from Adam, Sis, Noah, Moses, Abraham, to the Prophet Muhammad, all warned their people against Dajjal. We should therefore ask ourselves, where did they learn about Dajjal and his power? The answer is that they saw him in the world of Ghaib, where all the enemies of the prophets are raised, and Dajjal the Antichrist stood out as the most wicked and the most dangerous. Therefore, it was this Dajjal that Allah established as the exclusive enemy for the mission of the Prophet Insa. Therefore, if God had not raised Insa to the world of Ghaib and he carried out his mission to the end, he would inevitably encounter Dajjal. And if he did encounter him, his will and determination would allow him to exterminate Dajjal. However, since God only acts by his will, when the assassination attempt took place, he raised him to heaven so that he could send him back again later. God carried out a reorganization, saying that he would bring Dajjal back when Jesus returned to earth. Indeed, when God thwarted the assassination attempt and raised Insa, the latter said to him, "Lord, you brought me back to save me from my enemies, but I ask you to testify for me that if you allowed me to continue living on earth, by my will, my determination, and the courage within me, I would neutralize my enemy named Dajjal." God replied, "I will give you the opportunity to prove this, but at the end of the world." This is why God will wait until Insa's descent to end Dajjal's life. All this reality is known to Imam Al Mahdi because he is an eyewitness to the sacred story. The problem is not that Imam Mahdi cannot kill Dajjal. He will not do so because it is not his mission to exterminate Dajjal. Rather, that mission is assigned to Insa. Indeed, when God granted Insa the prophetic mission, he entrusted him with a scepter, a mystical staff, which contained his power. If Insa had not been elevated to heaven, it was this staff that he would have used to kill Dajjal. For this staff contained his power and was like a sword to him. When he returned to heaven, he actually reorganized his mission by entrusting his scepter to a qutb. This qutb Zamani was Senegalese, and during his lifetime, he stated, "I am a disciple of the Prophet Sidi Ahmed, but I carried his baggage for Insa." The baggage he referred to was a metaphor, but he was referring to the staff. This qutb Zamani came with this scepter to the Maulud celebrations, and he took the scepter with him upon his return to Barzakh, the afterlife. Imam Al Mahdi will carry out his mission, dominate the majority of the planet, and everyone will pledge allegiance to him. But it is this moment that God will choose to bring forth Dajjal. This appearance of Dajjal does not mean that he will descend from heaven. No, rather, he will be born. Dajjal will be born in Jerusalem and will live to become the prime minister of a power. When he is prime minister and holds all the powers, he will emerge to make himself known. Although God has granted him power, all who observe him will see the characteristics the prophet gave him as confirmation that he is truly the Antichrist, Dajjal. He always wears a kind of black cap on his head. One of his eyes is almost blind, but he can see, and he takes a kind of black rubber resembling glass with which he bandages this eye and leaves the other eye free. Also, God gave him a very broad forehead so that whoever observes him will see the prophet's indications on it. Even if the other part of the writing Kafir does not appear well, the letter Kaf appears clearly. He is strong and tall. Wickedness is reflected on his face, and God has endowed him with immense magical powers. By the time Dajjal takes his inauguration, Imam Al Mahdi will have already dominated the planet. During his speech, the first thing Dajjal will say is, "Whoever dominates the world today, and who governs it in his own way, is an impostor." To everyone's surprise, everyone sitting on this platform will be stunned by this statement, because at that time, everyone will know Imam Al Mahdi, endowed with such power that no one dared oppose him. But Dajjal will publicly announce, in front of all the world's media, that the one you call Al Mahdi is an impostor. And what's worse, he will add, "I will prove that he is an impostor." When asked how you intend to do this, he will reply, "I am the Prophet Insa." He will therefore claim to be the Prophet Insa and that he has come to prove that Imam Al Mahdi is an impostor. He will add that he was born in Jerusalem and grew up there, so he knows what he is saying. This is how he will begin to manipulate and convince the Jews, who will begin to believe him. But he will never be able to deceive Muslims, because Imam Al Mahdi had already revealed the content of his speech to Muslims. They were therefore prepared. However, Dajjal will deceive people by showing them the powers he possesses. Among these, when he heard the Jews say that Insa could resurrect the dead, he killed a person, after which he resurrected him, and will say that if he were not Insa, Jesus Christ, he could not do it. This is when people will begin to rally behind him. Aware of his supporters, Dajjal declared war on Imam Al Mahdi. He will begin to contradict Imam Al Mahdi in his statements, giving his own version of events. Thus, the world will descend into an ideological tug-of-war through the confrontation between Al Mahdi's lectures and those of Dajjal, broadcast throughout the world. Dajjal the Antichrist will therefore attempt to discredit the Mahdi's speeches by propagating his own version of events. He will be a formidable adversary. But beyond that, despite everything Imam Al Mahdi was capable of doing, such as rendering technology obsolete, Dajjal will claim that no one can destroy his technology. But with Imam Al Mahdi's goodwill, he manages to make his technology function normally. This is why some will ask, isn't he Insa after all? From this story, we clearly see that he is a deceiver. But when his followers begin to multiply, he will abandon his claim to be Jesus Christ and say that he is now God. He will finally proclaim that he is God. Imam Al Mahdi will see Dajjal enter countries to preach his message. Al Mahdi will not attack Dajjal because in the city where he resides, Dajjal will not be able to enter. Even if he tried to do so, angels will block his way. He will not be able to enter Mecca or Medina. Thus, Al Mahdi will have some respite from this matter, because Dajjal will not be able to access the Imam or the men who run his governments. Dajjal will do a lot of harm, and Al Mahdi knew that this was part of the mission. That is why he will not interfere in his affairs, and this does not mean that Imam Al Mahdi will be afraid of him or that he does not have power against him. Dajjal will not have access to Imam Al Mahdi because everything he said about the Mahdi he did remotely via the internet and the media. But he will try everything, for he has promised his followers that he will exterminate Imam Al Mahdi. He will tell them, "I have the power, but I cannot locate him," or "If I locate him in a given place to send bombs there, the screen becomes blurred, but I know he is in Medina. The problem is that every time I try to enter, there are angels blocking my access." This is what Dajjal will say, adding, "If I manage to access there will be no more talk of Al Mahdi." However, despite all this tension, Imam Al Mahdi continues to carry out his mission, awaiting the descent of Insa, Jesus Christ. Thus, God will bring him down to Damascus, Syria, in the presence of many people. He will then join Al Mahdi. But what's more interesting in this story is the fact that the sword with which Insa will kill Dajjal is the scepter carried by Al Mahdi during his mission. It is Al Mahdi's mystical cane that he will use to execute Dajjal by pointing it at him. Dajjal will explode and melt like ice exposed to the sun. So the weapon that will kill Dajjal is in the hands of Imam Al Mahdi, but he will only use it when Insa comes to confirm his mission and kill Dajjal. Now, dear viewers, we now know that it is Imam Al Mahdi who holds the weapon that will kill Dajjal, but he, Al Mahdi, will not exterminate Dajjal because that is not his mission. Moreover, the scepter Insa used during his first visit to Earth was entrusted to a Qutb Zaman. So it is in the Gaib world. Everything is a question of organization and hidden realities. And the precursors, the Awliyas, said that if one finds ambiguities in sacred history, one must question the members of the Damar al-Kawni, which is the hidden side of things, and those who can interpret it are those who have access to this reality. Thus ends our teaching concerning the Prophet Insa, Jesus Christ, and the secrets hidden in the organization of the history of Dajjal and Imam Al Mahdi. It is a complex organization that only eyewitnesses of sacred history can reveal. Subscribe and activate the notification bell to never miss any of Imam Al Mahdi's revelations.